Today we'll be studying the rise of totalitarianism in Europe. To understand why totalitarian governments were on the rise within Europe after World War I, specifically throughout the 1920s and 1930s, we have to first look at the ripple effects that were left over from World War I. The end of World War I did not bring peace and prosperity as originally anticipated. In fact, World War I brought on revolutions, it pointed the blame at many groups, and it brought on an economic depression that not only swept across America, but it also hit Europe quite hard. People across Europe at this time truly struggled to make ends meet. Because people were struggling at this time, they put hope and they put their worries in powerful dictators who are driven by nationalism. Remember, nationalism is this idea that you are loyal to your country above all else. Now, the Treaty of Versailles, which was intended to bring World War I to a close and also bring on peace, actually ended up causing anger and resentment. To begin with, Germany had been blamed for the war. They were expected to pay for the war, their army was disbanded, they were stripped of colonial territories, and the Democratic Weimar Republic really struggled at this point in time simply because it hadn't previously been established before. In addition to this, the Soviets were also angry with the Treaty of Versailles. They felt that new borders that were being drawn in accordance with the treaty were carving up parts of Russia, and they didn't agree with the process that had been taken. The treaty tried to establish democratic governments throughout Europe, but unfortunately, many didn't function well or strongly. And because of this, people turned to strong, authoritarian leaders to help. Because of collapsing democracies, this led to the rise of strong dictators. As democracies fell across Europe, soon we see totalitarian governments gaining power. A totalitarian government, it's a characteristic of a political system in which the government exercises complete control over its citizens' lives. What you can see here in the image that I've provided is almost a puppeteer working with marionette dolls, where the one person is in control of all of the people below him or her. And so a totalitarian government is very much a controlling government. Today, we are going to look at three specific totalitarian governments that came to power in the 1930s following World War I. We'll look at the Communist Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin, Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler, and Fascist Italy under Benito Mussolini. To begin with, we'll look at Communist Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin. We have a couple questions that we have to ask ourselves in regard to understanding these totalitarian governments. To begin with, why did the Soviet Union establish this totalitarian government? Well, during World War I, we had the fall of the monarchy. After World War I, there was a hope for democracy. The people of Russia genuinely wanted to reestablish a new form of government. Unfortunately, this led to a revolution that ultimately turned into a civil war. And the outcome of this civil war was a communist state. So, how did Joseph Stalin rise to power specifically? Lenin was the original leader of the new communist Soviet Union that was formerly Russia. Following the death of Lenin, Stalin takes over this communist Soviet state. So, what happened as a result of this specific totalitarian government? Well, Stalin lays out 5-year plans where he wants to create a model communist state, meaning that he wants to create a communist state that all other countries will hopefully look towards for inspiration and to also become communist states. With that being said, the government takes total control of both farming and industry. Anyone who opposed his rule is quote unquote removed. Now, removed is a very nice term for either executed, killed, or completely removed from the state itself. As a result of Stalin's rule, between starvation as well as people who opposed his rule, an estimated 8 to 13 million people died under his communist Soviet Union. So that's Joseph Stalin. Next, we are going to look at Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. Nazism is a new term that we are going to be looking at for this unit. Nazism is a political philosophy based on extreme nationalism, racism, and militaristic expansion. So just as before, we're going to answer the same three questions. Why did Germany establish this totalitarian government? Well, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, better known as the Nazi Party, grew extremely popular following the Great Depression. People in Germany were desperate for solutions. So, how did Adolf Hitler specifically rise to power? Well, first, Hitler was appointed prime minister within Germany. After he was appointed prime minister, he dismantled Germany's democratic Weimar Republic from the inside. In his position, he expanded the powers of his role as prime minister, otherwise known as chancellor, and took over following the death of President Hindenburg. There were no elections held following the death of this president. Hitler simply took command, given his expanded powers within his new role. So, what happened as a result of this totalitarian government? Hitler tried to create a German empire. He focused specifically on racial purification and militaristic expansion. Acts of genocide, such as the Holocaust, took place with these initiatives. Close to 11 million people died during the Holocaust. Now we are on to our final totalitarian government and leader. So finally, we will look at fascist Italy under Benito Mussolini. Fascism is another vocabulary term that we're introducing this unit. Fascism is a political philosophy that advocates a strong, centralized, nationalistic government with a dictator. So again, why did Italy establish this totalitarian government? Well, unemployment and economic depression had led to strikes and riots. Many Italians who feared communism called for stronger political leadership. And this is the same that we've seen throughout the other two countries, where people are at a very low point. They're looking for somebody to take on leadership, somebody who is strong and somebody who seems to have a very clear focus. So, how did Benito Mussolini specifically rise to power? Well, he was a very powerful speaker. He established the fascist party and gained many followers who are nationalists. Again, nationalists are people who are very strongly loyal to their country. After he establishes the fascist party, government officials, the army, and the police actually side with his party politics. Soon, the Italian king actually appointed him to head the government and take control. So, what happened as a result of this totalitarian government? Well, for starters, Adolf Hitler actually modeled aspects of his takeover after Mussolini's success in Italy. Fascists in Italy allied themselves with the Axis powers during World War II, but later, fascist Italy actually unconditionally surrendered to the Allies towards the end of World War II. So today, this has been a quick overview of 3 different totalitarian governments within Europe that rise during the 1930s and lead us into World War II. As a recap, we have Communist Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, and Fascist Italy, Benito Mussolini.